All right, everyone. Good morning. I'm going to go ahead and get started since we're at 10 o'clock. Thank you all for being here today. So today I'm going to be going through an EFP Plus informational webinar. So my name is Lisa Nadeau, and I am the EFP Director. I work for the Agricultural Research Extension Council of Alberta, which is responsible for the delivery of the EFP program here in Alberta. I'm really excited to share today's content with you of our new program. I also have Tanya Mosco-Lebert here. She will be keeping an eye on the chat. So if you have any questions at any point, feel free to make a comment in the chat, or it's a pretty small group right now, so feel free to unmute and ask your questions as well. So today we will be talking about what is the EFP program, what are the benefits of completing an EFP. We'll talk about what the farm sustainability assessment is, and we'll talk about what does the farm sustainability assessment have to do with the EFP program. We'll talk about our new EFP Plus program, the benefits of using EFP Plus, and how EFP Plus can be used to reach sustainability goals. So just to give you a little bit of context, the Alberta EFP program started in 2003. It was started by the Environmental Farm Plan Company. And then in 2009, it was returned to the provincial government to be run in-house. And then they contracted it out in 2013. And since then, Erica has been running the program. So that's the Agricultural Research and Extension Council of Alberta. And we launched our online version in 2015. So prior to that, it was ran by producers would fill out a big binder, but now they can complete it on their own time online with the support from Erica. So the EFP program, we are responsible for the delivery of EFP in Alberta. Our work is guided by a stakeholder advisory committee. So they provide our governance structure, and it's comprised of industry and stakeholder groups within the crop, livestock, and food industry. We are working with producers and industry groups to support the EFP program and ensure the content is relevant and useful to today's farmers. The EFP program is Canada-wide, so each province does have their own program. And though it does look a little bit different across the board. And then in terms of privacy, we take that very seriously. So all data of farmers is protected, and we ensure their confidentiality so they can feel secure in using our program to assess their environmental risk. So reasons to complete an EFP. First and foremost, it's an education and awareness program. So it helps producers to identify their environmental risks and then come up with plans to mitigate those risks. And it is also great for future planning, as now the farmer has knows where their environmental risks are and can keep that in mind when upgrading or replacing parts of the operation. It can also help with increasing efficiency on the farm, which can lead to an increase in profit. So for example, more efficient use of chemical inputs. Having an EFP is also a prerequisite for some government funding programs, such as the Canadian Agricultural Partnership. They have a couple programs. One is the Efficient Grain Handling Program, and one is the Farm Technology Program. And it's a prerequisite for those programs, and producers can apply to get cost share funding on either adopting new practices or getting new equipment for their farms. Having an EFP can also help improve market access for Alberta grown agri-products. So the more Albertans that have an EFP, the more we're able to demonstrate to global markets that products in Alberta are grown and raised sustainably. And it also helps meet global standards for sustainable sourcing. So that's a lot of what we'll be talking about today. And it can also be used for leaving the farm in good shape for the next generation and be used as a tool for succession planning. So some farmers find it's a great way to get the younger generations involved in planning on the farm. So we have EFP technicians. So these are trained EFP techs that are there to help producers with completing their online workbook. They're paired with a technician when they sign up to do a workbook, and they are there to help them complete their workbook, answer any of their questions. They review and provide feedback on their action plan, and they can provide recommended beneficial management practices for the producer to adopt to help address environmental risk on their farm. They're also there to help them, point them towards different resources that can help them with implementing their action plan, such as funding programs or where they can get more information. And they're located throughout the province to provide that one-on-one support. So the EFP is a free and voluntary whole farm self-assessment tool. So producers identify those environmental risks, develop action plans to mitigate those risks, and then we have a 10-year renewal period in place. So once they get their certificate, it's considered valid for 10 years, and then which time they can do a renewal. Currently, what a renewal means is people who had their big binders before are now using our online system. And so this is based off of soil and site characteristics, topography, water sources and water bodies, management practices and potential sources of contamination. So some examples of potential sources of contamination could be storage of pesticides, manure, fuel storage, and many others that are addressed in the EFP. So here is a look at what the chapters are that are included in our current version of the online workbook. So we have the ones that apply to the whole farm. So looking at stuff like emergency planning, habitat, and water. And then we have the section that looks at the farmsteads. So this could be different storage of potential sources of contamination, such as petroleum or fertilizer. And then we also look at the fields. So what's happening in the fields, such as crop management and pasture management, and the management practices that are used there. So I'm going to stop my share here quick and then share a video with you. It's a quick couple-minute video. You can let me know in the chat if for whatever reason it's not working on your end.
The Environmental Farm Plan is it's a tool for assessing the environmental risks on your farm. Everybody has got a video camera on their cell phone, and all it takes is seeing you do something once, and boom, you know, it's on the internet.
I can see the day where I need to be able to prove and justify what I'm doing to the public, so sort of the right to farm social license issue. Your responsibility doesn't change whether you have a farm plan or not. It's just that the farm plan shows that you've done your due diligence, right? That you've made yourself aware and you have a plan to deal with these things. Ignorance of the issues is not justification for not tackling them.
What I see coming down the pipeline being the fact that we now have retailers and consumer groups at the table talking to us. No longer is our word going to be sufficient in describing and telling our story of what it is that we do every day. With the lack of this tool, we will start to see questions of our industry that we won't like, we frankly won't like.
tackle the easy stuff, tackle the cheap stuff. There's lots of things we've done here. We've got, for our used oil, we have a secondary containment bin. It cost us $200 at a plastic place. We keep all our used oil pails inside a secondary containment bin.
A common concern with environmental farm plans is that what happens with my information? Is my information safe? Our technicians sign an agreement saying that it's confidential. We can't put that information out there.
The environmental farm plan has been designed from the ground up, from the grassroots up, from a producer's perspective. This isn't a program that you're going to pass or fail. It's a learning tool.
There's a common misconception, and that is the belief that if I've identified all of these issues on my farm as a result of going through the farm plan, that now I am obligated to go out and fix all of these problems in the span of a year or two. And that's simply not the case.
I want to have my ducks in a row and everything in place. I'd rather be the example than be told how to do it. So that just gives me documentation and proof of what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Now you've prepared, you've done some of the groundwork to get yourself involved, and you've done it now before it's an emergency, then you're ready.
Okay, so hopefully that came through clearly for you. So now we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the farm sustainability assessment. So the SI platform, so the Sustainable Agricultural Initiative Platform, Farm Sustainability Assessment is what we're talking about here. It's a tool that assesses sustainable practices on farms. So the SI platform is a multinational group of companies whose membership includes many of the largest purchasers of agricultural commodities. Their commitment is to helping create a future where people, the planet, and sustainable business solutions come together to ensure a viable and resilient agricultural sector. So this FSA tool is intended to be a comprehensive approach to farm sustainability, built around a free set of simple questions which standardize farm assessments. The FSA 2.1 has 112 questions, and they relate to people, planet, and profit. So this is a global standard that drives continuous improvement on farm and can be found in 40+ countries across the globe. And it's just enabling food and drink businesses to assess, improve, and validate on-farm sustainability within their supply chain. So what does FSA have to do with EFP? So the Alberta EFP workbook was benchmarked against the FSA on content. So in conjunction with federal and provincial legislation, EFP Plus has been formally accepted as equivalent to the SI platform's farm sustainability assessment. And we received that equivalency level of silver. So we currently, it's not possible to achieve gold FSA status within the EFP because some of the questions doesn't currently exist within our workbook. And most of those questions have to do around people and planet, people and profit. So we focused on the environmental side, whereas some of the questions are around that social sustainability or the financial sustainability. It's possible that future versions of the EFP will include those options so that a producer can achieve an FSA gold status, but our current version does not. And then industry groups can make claims based on this FSA to a certain degree of up to silver. So the EFP Plus. So following provincial and federal legislation, and we've received credit for FSA. So if they follow those provincial and national legislation, just by checking off a couple boxes, we have a couple questions that just ask, do you follow legislation, and do you keep up to date on legislation? And then by virtue of completing an EFP, some questions are regarding having a plan or seeking advice or having awareness, and they receive automatic credit for those questions simply by completing an EFP workbook. And then there's questions only covered by EFP, and they're not covered by legislation, and they're mapped in the background to determine equivalency on individual FSA questions. So those multiple EFP questions can be mapped to multiple FSA questions and vice versa, but that all happens on the background. It's a very simple process as far as the producer is concerned, because they see basically the same workbook with the addition of those two questions that are about legislation. The producer then receives a final FSA score up to an FSA silver level. So we've talked about EFP equivalency to FSA on content, but there's also the governance and verification components. So the EFP program is equivalent. Our program content, oversight, policies, and continuous improvement serves to meet that governance standard of the FSA. And then for the verification component, we've prepared auditor guidance and have received equivalency. If an industry group wishes to make an FSA claim on sustainable practices, they can arrange on-farm audits of a small sample of farmers who have completed the EFP Plus workbook. And then based on FSA verification guidance, those audits are performed, and that's performed on the EFP workbook itself, not on a separate FSA questionnaire. So, and that audit can only be performed by FSA approved third-party groups. So what are the benefits of EFP Plus? So it's built for agricultural producers. So the FSA 2.1 is designed for farmers all over the world, whereas the Alberta EFP program is designed for specifically for producers who operate within the Alberta context. Each producer is also assigned a technician within their region, which we talked about earlier, so that can really provide them with that one-on-one support through the online environment and give them lots of feedback on their plans. The EFP webbook is also full of local resources and tips for implementing their action plan and achieving equivalency to FSA questions. So producers with a current EFP are eligible for those cost share funding programs that we talked about. That really serves that value added component of doing an EFP Plus. By virtue of completing an EFP 3.1 Plus, the producers receive credit to lots of the questions within the FSA, making it a very simple process for producers. And we just discussed the governance and auditor guidance structure that's in place to help with the verification component. The primary purpose of the EFP is education and awareness to assist producers in achieving their operations sustainability goals. And then also within the FSA, there's a requirement to renew every 3 years. So we have that capacity built into our online program so that producers can easily achieve that goal in a way that's straightforward and still meaningful for their operation. But what does this all mean? So the EFP Plus can be used to assess on-farm sustainability performance. It can also be used to formalize and document sustainability in agriculture. So a lot of these things are already happening. They just haven't been formally written down and documented. So this is a process that is accepted for that. Through having producers complete an EFP Plus workbook and by performing an audit sample, these industry groups can then make public FSA claims on their websites or social media or however they intend to do it. So for an example of this would be 100% of products is sustainably sourced FSA bronze or silver or whatever it is that they've achieved. If producers already have an EFP, so they've already completed a workbook within the last 10 years or online, it's actually really simple and easy to update to an EFP Plus workbook. And we're happy to walk producers through that process. So these industry groups should register with Sci Platform to become a farm management group, and then they can reach out to the EFP program, and we're happy to help get their producers into the EFP Plus program. To provide a little bit more context of what's happening in Canada, so Alberta already has this EFP Plus program in place and operational. And both Saskatchewan and Manitoba have committed to having an EFP Plus in place as well. They're currently working on their online systems to do that. Other provinces are working on benchmarking the content. And recently, FSA launched a new version. So they have FSA 3.0 available. So here in Alberta, we'll be upgrading to that most recent version, 3.0. But ours is still considered valid. There's an 18-month grace window, so we'll make sure that there is no interruption in service for producers. So I've provided a lot of information today. I'd like to take the opportunity to open up for any questions if anybody has them.